so I don't forget. And is it recorded? Okay, great. I'm really excited for today. So happy to see all of you. And we're going to make this kind of interactive. So if you have your chart on hand, or I mean, if you don't have your chart on hand, or if you could get it on hand, I'll just give you a couple minutes to pull it up, because I just want to, you just have to know what house the full moon is activating for you. So you might know that already. You don't have to pull it up if you know. And the way to do that is to find basically Gemini on your chart. If you need help, just let me know. I can look it up for you. But we just want to know what house the full moon is in, or was really. We're still in it kind of, but where was, I believe it was 19 degrees of Gemini. So just finding Gemini on your chart and write down whatever house that's in for you. So I'll just give you a minute, and when you're ready, you can pop it into the chat. That would be good, because then I can know where yours is at. I'll pull up Ashley. Hey.
How are you? I actually have a question, because depending on the house system, so when I work with you on one-on-one, it falls into the 8th house. And then when I looked into, I don't even remember which is which, but the other system that I had been using goes into the 9th house. So it makes a big difference. Am I just like...
Yeah, no, it does. This is one of those gray areas of astrology that drives people crazy. And it's really, truly, I believe, like very much an intuitive thing. I'm just going to wait so I think my... Oops. Did I freeze in a very weird... Did you hear that? Because I hear you laughing. I just don't see like...
Yeah, I heard you, and I do see a funny face, so I resonate with what you said.
So basically, like, it takes a little experimenting to find the house system that you resonate with. And sometimes it's a matter of, like, kind of accepting that maybe it's not so black and white. Like, for me, for example... Like, I have the kind of chart that when I use different house systems, it changes like my sun placement, which is really significant. And that was really confusing for a long time. It's like some house system, it's 11th house, some it's the 12th. So I was like, well, which is it? And so the way that I learned it, that makes so much sense, because I totally resonate with 11th and I totally resonate with 12th. Like, really, like, I'm like, that is so true. But as far as picking one for like transits, like I find that I lean towards whole, right? Whole houses. I just like it. It makes it even, right? Or equal. And it's just kind of tracking a little bit. Like maybe spend a couple months with one and be like, does it really resonate? Or maybe it's both, you know, like maybe it is like something more of like a
transition,
yeah, or like a, what's that word, spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know? So it's kind of one of those experimental things.
Cool.
And the houses are, I think we spoke about this on our last apprentices call, but like the houses are a really fascinating area because there's a lot of history and, you know, different like meaning that why certain house systems are. So it's kind of one of those things that I say, like, dig a little, see what you resonate with, and then experiment and see if it rings true for you.
Okay.
So, okay. Yeah. So pick one for today, or pick both and kind of write for both, and then you can come and share with us whichever resonates. But hey, Amanda, so we're looking up which house the full moon activated for you on your chart. So just finding Gemini, and then you can share it in the chat. Okay, so I am just going to pull it up so that I have astro.com in case anybody needs help, and then we'll get into the topic. But my computer is being super slow. I'm sorry. if it's like choppy. Okay, so the moon is still in Gemini at the moment, 26 degrees. So we're still in the energy for sure. But yeah, just finding your chart, your house where it was, and then write that down. We're going to come back to that toward the end, and we're going to do a little cool ritual with it for the full moon. So I thought that today it might be fun to just start off with like a little, just like a little conversation, open conversation about some themes related to this full moon. Something really interesting came up between a very close friend of mine, Tracy, and myself, where we were talking about this topic of like, okay, well, before I even go into it, I just want to explain that one of the powerful aspects of this morning's full moon was that Neptune was squaring the moon and the sun. So Neptune, and I posted about this, but Neptune rules, you know, in its power, like exalted expression, it's mysticism and spirituality and our connection to source, and it has to do with like universal oneness, universal consciousness. And in that way, and it rules the sign of Pisces, right? So Pisces, as we know, is like universal love. It's all one. There's no boundary. There's no separation. It's the final house of the zodiac, the 12th house. So in that place, there's just, everything is one. It's just one. But the shadow expression of Neptune is illusion. And you could say delusion too. Is that a word? Disillusion or something, like just unclarity, fogginess, you know, uncertainty. Everything is just kind of blurry because of that exalted expression too of like oneness. But on the shadow of that, you know, in the 3D, that kind of confuses things, and it's like, where's the boundary? And so Neptune's effect, you could say, is like blurring the edges of things. And when we experience a powerful Neptune transit, or like when Neptune was retrograde, for example, like things get very foggy and it's hard to know, like, what's the truth here? And by the way, Neptune also rules our intuition. So, and like psychic powers and stuff like that. So I found it really interesting because like what's been coming up for me, and Tracy and I were talking about this, like I realized like in the past couple of months, I think I have invested like insane amounts of money in like self-help stuff. Like it's like an addiction. So I was realizing last night, I was like, holy fuck, like I'm addicted to programs and courses. And like, it's like, it was so clear to me, like I never thought about it really before, but that totally came through because, you know, what happened was I have so many different programs and courses that I've done like 2% of. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at the completion, and I was like, what is up with that? Like, why are we so obsessed? And like, I felt like Neptune, like that, like square was coming to show me and like share with me something important around, you know, just looking at that. So I thought it might be a cool thing to talk about, whether you resonate with that or not. But there's, you know, Neptune does rule addiction as well. So I just thought like that might be a cool topic to explore, because as I was sitting with it, really, I was like realizing how, you know, that is like you could say it's like one of the shadows of the whole like coaching self-improvement industry that we are in. And what really came through for me was like, wow, like as a coach myself, you know, I really want to make sure that I am not somehow perpetuating this kind of unhealthy addiction, you know, even though it's not our responsibility necessarily. But I just wanted to bring it up and see if it's something that you guys have thought about, if you connect with, if it's something that might be of interest to talk about today. And then I have a couple of other themes too. But I just thought that was such a potent, because Gemini, as you know, is learning and the pursuit of knowledge, and like Sagittarius as well, the opposite sign where the sun is. So it was like, oh my gosh, like this is a real theme here. And that was very potent and resonant for me. So I just wanted to bring it up. Does that sound like something maybe you'd want to explore a little bit from both sides, really? I think both as the consumer and as the business owner. Sorry, I'm like a little sick still, but if anybody wants to chime in at any point, I'd love for this to just be like interactive. And, I feel like these types of conversations are so healing for us, and that's what I really want for these plugged in rituals and calls to be about, where we talk about things. Hey Tracy, I think you're here. So anybody feel free to unmute yourself, chime in, share what you have to say if there's anything.
Daphna, this is Kimberly. So it's interesting. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, because I have a really slow internet connection over here also. When you first said that you had this realization of this somewhat of an addiction to these self-help programs, the very first thing that popped in for me is that you and I both have our sun sign ruled by Mercury, because I'm a Virgo sun. And, so that's the piece that popped in for me. I myself have that exact same experience. Like,
wow.
And you and I've talked about this too. I have my dominant sign in Libra because I have that stellium, which of course I've learned from you also wants to know all the things, right? All the things.
All the signs.
Oh my gosh, exactly. And so that's the piece that really pops in. But I also know, I'm certified in numerology, and my day of birth is a 12, which is, of course, the universal number that we have for this year right now. But we have a quintuple 12 code happening with this full moon. And the 12 is also the eternal student having a desire to share and become also the teacher. So that's the piece that most resonates for me. And I don't know that that necessarily would resonate with everyone else, but that's what is super strong. And I've had that experience in the past where I'm like, what is my obsession with constantly learning and learning and learning? But then the other piece is that with my strength finders, one of my strengths is input, which again falls into that having more information and knowledge. So that would be the piece that, that I would share. And I've learned to just embrace it, as opposed to like, I think in the past there was a little bit of judgment on my part about that and what's the deal with that. But as I've dove more deeply into my own personal development and self-awareness and understanding, I've just come to accept and embrace that that's just a part of my personality.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I think there's always going to be like there's so much positive in it, like there's so much good in of course wanting to learn more, and being a student. That's the gift of Gemini. I mean, I want to talk about that. And then there's also always going to be like the shadow, right, in which it's like not being expressed in a way that actually serves us, or that, right,
Absolutely.
actually fulfill what we're meant to be fulfilling. So I really appreciate that. And I think that definitely there's that air connection there.
Well, and I completely agree with you on that whole shadow side, because the thing that that I have recognized is that I personally can fall into, I need to know more, I need to know more, I need to know more. And it becomes almost a weakness and preventing me from then sharing what it is that I've learned and implementing it.
I love what you said about the 12 being like that. It's more about stepping into the teacher role at a certain point, rather than like I think we really have to always be both. But again, if it becomes this never-ending cycle of constantly feeling that it's never enough, and that like, oh, just one more thing, just one more program, just one more thing, right? Then it's unhealthy at a certain point.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree and resonate with that.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I want to just catch up on the chat here just to read what some people are saying, but So Libby asked, does having Venus and Mars in Aries also affect this? Not sure what you mean. Libby, do you mean affect this kind of desire to keep learning? Just clarify that, please. And then Kimberly shared, okay, your sun, yes, the Mercury connection, totally, 100%. Livy shared that she's learned to take a step back when she gets excited to do and start something new. Yeah, to make sure it's not just, yes, the excitement of beginning. I love that you use those words because that's very Gemini. The excitement of a new beginning. That's literally what Gemini is about. And I think that's the energy that maybe we become a little bit addicted to when we buy these things. It's like, you know, that rush of excitement of the potential that awaits you in this thing that you're buying or whatever, that I realized, you know, was, and I started seeing it because, you know, I wasn't actually following through. It was just, I want something new, you know, and that Gemini energy is, you know, to me, the exalted expression of it is actually that we can always start new. And it's this just complete openness to potential, you know? So I know it's like stemmed in that, but does anybody else want to share just anything, you know, that you feel you want to share on this topic?
Can I share a bit? It's
Oh,
Cassandra.
of course, Cassandra. Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, I have exactly the same thing. It's just like, I think, yeah, addiction is a really good word. It's a bit shocking because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like it's like you want to succeed, or for me, it's like I want to succeed in what I'm doing, but I feel like if I don't have that hit of excitement, is it going to be success? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it going to be successful if I don't have that, like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing factor to it? And it's quite dangerous because once that goes, like you said, it's an initial moment and then it goes and I'm stuck with reality going like, oh, I have to see this through now. And with my dominant like sign in Sag, it's really like, it's definitely a challenge for me. And that's what's been coming up for me recently is like, okay, how am I actually going to do, especially like what we're doing in Abracadabra, like ground it in and make it something stable and steady and that you can rely on. And I think that comes from like, because I don't do that enough. It's really one of my worst traits is that I just cannot see things through, and I really am working and intending on changing that. But I totally get what you mean as well, because it's like in the personal development industry, it's all like, if you don't invest in yourself constantly, you can't expect other people to invest in you. So as soon as you sort of finish one course, it's like, right, I need to get my next one because I need people to invest in me. So I need to invest in myself. And it's that, it gets to a point for me where I'm like, I've learned so much. Now I can't actually ground it into what I need to share with people because it's so far gone with what I've learned. I'm like, with the whole moon and Libra and everything, like, I'm just like, all my ideas are like up here and people who probably want to learn from me are like down here. How, like, it then just becomes a detriment of how can I make that connection with people who aren't up here yet? And that's obviously what we're learning in Abracadabra, but it's definitely one of my things I need to work on.
And I want to say too, you know, like I am all about investing in yourself. You know what I mean? Like I'm not that, I think it's more when it's coming almost as this like distraction from the actual work, you know, and like where it's just next thing to the next, like the shiny object syndrome, which is totally a Gemini thing, like a shadow of Gemini thing, where if we're actually like going deep with it and doing the work and getting out of it, you know, giving ourselves the permission to actually receive from the program and really go deep with it and be present with it, then there's no greater thing, you know, because at every step of our way, we're going to be learning new things. But, you know, if that's not actually happening, then is it really serving us? You know, and like for this major, like I was like, whoa, like I can't even believe how much I've just avoided like really just being present, you know, which is a struggle for all the air signs. that grounded presence of like just going intimate and deep with things, you know? So yeah, I totally hear you too. And I think that like just knowing these things about ourselves, you know, like these are kind of like those blind spots, you know, but that's what sometimes you know, like these lunations, like they're like messengers, right? And they come and they teach us, and we'll each have our own experience, but sometimes they are collective, and we have these kind of, and it's like all for our good to help us see where, you know, we're not actually using really our energy and our life force effectively, really, you know. So I'm actually like really honored to hear you guys sharing this, because I know it's not something that's really spoken about, I feel, in general, you know. And I love what Corinne shared to hear that Corinne said, I've been having crazy dreams about being a prisoner of some sort, not being able to express myself. And yesterday I realized that I had to free myself from the prison of knowledge and let myself experience the unknown. Yeah, Corinne, that's really powerful. The prison of knowledge. Yeah. Wow. Where's your Gemini in your chart again?
It's so now we've decided it resonates with the 8th house in equal. I wasn't using equal for some reason. So it's exactly at that degree almost, to like specifically. And it's like the whole thing we've talked about pretty much that's coming through. You intuitively had pointed that in our meeting, and it's literally what's going on in my dream state. And yeah,
well, I was going to say, like, any of those, like the 8th house, the 12th house, or even the 4th, there is this kind of, it's very subconscious stuff. And like the word you use, prison, is just so interesting, because, you know, the 8th house has a lot to do with like, I mean, the 12th house is actually associated with prisons, but they're all water houses. But the 8th house actually has to do with more like, it's almost like the closet where we keep things hidden away. So
that makes so much sense.
Keep it there, you know.
Yeah.
Got a little trapped in those places.
Yeah. And my Neptune was super solicited yesterday too, like around the same time. My Neptune is in the 3rd house. So yeah, and like opposite my Chiron, I think. Like crazy placements of like prisons. Anyway, so it feels better now that I know why I've been dreaming about these things.
Oh, and
yeah.
Neptune rules dreams too.
Yeah.
So that whole subconscious world, you know, it's really, I've been having such crazy realizations too, just as I've been exploring this more, you know, like even just before, like as I was getting ready, I was like, oh my God, like, you know, when you follow something that really, you know, that you don't want to look at, you know, like this whole type of conversation, and really looking at it with yourself and being like, you know, and it doesn't have to just be with like courses, you know, it's like your relationship with money, like anything where you're just kind of, you're doing it unconscious, you're running it on an unconscious place where it's like, almost like you go out of your body when you're doing the thing, you know, like spending, let's say, or investing in more and more and more courses and not actually finishing them. Like, I feel like for me, it's like I go into this place where I just check out and I'm like not doing it. Like, I don't give like, I'm not just sitting down and like really making it from this like conscious decision place. And that is the realm of the 12th house and also the 8th, where it's like we kind of just want to hide from ourselves, you know. But when you follow it, you start to follow it, you know, you can there's so much power there that can actually, you know, reveal things about so many aspects of yourself and your life. And so this is not something to ever be ashamed of. It's something that has so much power and potential for up leveling, you know. So I was like so excited when I had that realization, because I was like, wow, if I can like just keep following this thread, I feel like, you know, I could feel it. I was like, this is going to shift so much for me if I just go in with eyes wide open, you know, and just see what's there, like what's actually happening. So
that's really cool. It's interesting. I'll just like add one more thing, because you just reminded me. Mm-hmm. I don't take a lot of courses per se. I'm very like I like to do things my way on my own a lot. And until I met you, when I met you, it kind of became a different story because I'm like obsessed with the way you teach. So I did do so much of your stuff, and I love it so much. And recently, I mentioned it to you. It's like recently my body literally is telling me to just like detach from outside learning. Is super interesting, and it's only since I've worked with you. I don't know. It's really cool. It's like a funny paradox with what you were saying about, like, I wouldn't have said that I was obsessed with courses because I wasn't until I met you, and then you kind of like turned the whole thing around very quickly for me. Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah. It's all about empowerment. So, right, like to me, if it comes from within you and it's an inner knowingness, then that's me having done my job, like, whereas I think that sometimes, it can be very easy to slip into just, again, that whole unconscious kind of approach to business, right? Where it's like, well, let's just all be unconscious together here. And like, I'll sell to your unconscious and you know what I mean? Like, so I guess we're shifting that, and I just don't think that it is something that is spoken about enough. And you know what I mean? I'm so happy that you are taking, like, astrology truly is meant to empower, right? And in a certain way, while we're still always going to be learning, and I'm not advocating for not learning, of course. I mean, the number one, well, I say this a lot. I say there's many number ones, but a very important trait in business is being teachable. But that's different from constantly feeling that you need one more thing or one more this or one more that to be enough. It's a very different mindset.
Yeah, totally.
I want to repeat for Amanda. Thank you for sharing that, Green. But what I said about the 4, 8, and 12th houses, those are the water houses. So I was mentioning that they are very connected to the subconscious, and the activity within them usually is very, it kind of runs more in the subconscious realm for us. So the 12th house rules prisons and imprisonment. The 8th house has to do with like the shadow, first off, but also like it's kind of like the closet, like the things that we feel ashamed that we have to hide about ourselves. The 4th house is the Imam Cheli, right? The taproot, which is connected to the moon and Cancer, but that is more of like, it's the home, but it's still this kind of closed space, right? Where it's like, we're kind of just in this room. All of the water houses have that kind of energy to them. So whenever we speak about a planet being there, or, let's say for Karine, she has Gemini ruling her 8th house, so there's going to be some kind of like more subconscious expression or connection to Gemini for her. For me, it rules my 12th house. So it's similar in a certain way. So, and I just want to read what Cassandra said. Similar for me, since working with Daphne, I've definitely been trusting myself so much more after. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. So yeah, and then I was just kind of thinking about how, as a business owner from the other side of things, like how do we sell like in an empowering way? Because like it's so easy almost to kind of almost like prey upon this type of energy or whatever in people, and I don't want to be part of that, you know what I mean? Like I want to make sure that I am selling and showing up in a way that is speaking to the empowered version of my ideal client or whatever. So just curious, like if anything comes up for you guys around that, or if it's something that you've ever kind of given thought to, of like how, or maybe it's a conversation we can just have around like how do we, because we're all selling we're selling information, transformation, you know what I mean? And like one of my big realizations this full moon has been like, oh my gosh, like I think subconsciously I almost kind of hold back from selling more and from showing up more because I recognize in myself, this thing, and then I'm like, well, I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, it's just there, but I don't necessarily want to perpetuate that. So I was like, wow, like that's something that needs to be looked at because it doesn't have to be the way, you know? So I'm just curious if anything comes through for you guys. And that has 4 planets in her 4th house in Scorpio. Wow. Double water energy. Kimberly said it's interesting. Gemini is intercepting her entire 3rd house into the 4th. Wow. Yeah, so the intercepted, as we kind of spoke about, I think on one of our calls, you know, I don't really work so much with intercepted signs because I prefer using equal or whole, which eliminates that. But if it's something that you feel really, really intrigued by and you feel resonates with you, Kimberly, then, you know, the question there is like, the whole thing about the intercepted signs is that it's kind of like skipped over so that it's not expressed as either consciously or outwardly as the other signs. And if Gemini is intercepting your 3rd, right, then that would also mean that it's happening in Sag. Oh, we spoke about this last time, but you know, it's going to be on both ends of that axis. So you maybe just want to kind of explore, you know, the deeper, you know, subconscious expression. Are you giving it full expression? Are you expressing it, right, like we were talking about just before, like in a kind of unconscious way where it's not really, what I mean by that is like it's just not intentional. It's not like this kind of awakened way of expressing it that's serving you. It's like almost like a child, like I kind of think of it as like this inner child expression of it, right, where it's more serving like keeping us safe and small and like inner, right, as opposed to like claiming it, bringing it on, and then like using it in an intentional, conscious way to create what we want. So that's how I would kind of interpret that. Corinne said, I feel like I have to hold back too. Like I know I can sell anything almost, and it takes very much restraint and awareness. Do you mean to like not sell anything?
To not fall into, I'm sorry if that cut, to not fall into the unconscious selling, like you're saying, like to not perpetuate that sort of thing that we know people are so learning hungry in our industry. Yeah. So I oscillate between the two. I'm like, what else can I sell? It's like I'm impatient to just get the learnings out and teach, as some of you have mentioned. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how do I make sure this is like so precise and spot on? Like it's a dance.
What this is that I've been realizing more and more is like being really clear about who it's for and owning that as taking the responsibility on our end. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a big part of the unconscious selling is like, I'm just going to sell this thing or whatever, but then I really believe that it's on our responsibility and the onus is on us to be super clear about who it's for and what are some of those requirements, right, for them to actually have success in this thing, you know? And you guys let me know if you agree with that. But that is something I've been realizing more and more where, you know, I think it's also the responsibility of the person buying it. But at the same time, you know, not painting this kind of unrealistic Neptune picture, right? That totally feeds into that, like, oh yeah, it's just going to be great, you know, like you can do anything, like, oh, you know, and just kind of going with that and playing into that whole very like ungrounded, like unrealistic thing or whatever, and just being like a lot more responsible about the words we're using, you know, putting in some of those prereqs, like, you know, pre-qualifying people, things like that is a great way to do our part, right? You know, and we can't control everything, and I don't think we need to, but I think that that is a good thing where we can be more in integrity. You know, that's like bringing in a little Saturn there where we can say like, hey, you know, here, you know, here's exactly who it's for, and here are some prerequisites, and if you're just not there yet, then I'm not going to let my fear, right, of not making money or whatever override my integrity. So that's something I'm really looking at a lot.
I love this so much.
It, you know, and not just being like saying whatever a person needs to hear just to say yes. Which I think is kind of like, for some businesses, like it's just the norm. And then they have all this backlash or whatever, where it's like, you know, people don't, either they don't finish the course, they don't get the results they wanted, you know, like more emphasis on actually the realistic results and the delivery and things like that, less on like the selling and the just get it, you know. Yeah, so I think one of the great things we can talk about is, or just look at, you know, is what are some of the prereqs for, you go through every program you have and just really be honest and just really ask yourself, like, so if a person's really going to succeed with this, what do they need to have in place before even coming in to really get those results? So, okay. So does anybody else want to share or add anything to that? I think there's so much we could say about it, but Amanda, yeah? You got it.
Yeah, I was just like, where did the mute button go? You know, yeah, I think just being really clear for ourselves about what we want to share does make a difference, because that whole kind of pie in the sky thing that keeps happening is altering, I think, the way that the personal development and coaching business is being looked at, like really similar to like network marketing. You know, it's that like, look, you're going to buy a kit, you're going to buy my course, your whole life's going to change. Look at all these people who are making thousands and thousands of dollars. It's going to happen in 4 weeks, as opposed to this is a stepping stone. Just like when you go to college, if you take a class your first semester, you aren't a doctor and you aren't, you know, making millions of dollars or whatever it is, but like really creating like something, you know, having that really earthy element. And I'm like taking it on for me, just like seeing where I'm not being grounded and embodying things, and being clear, but like really creating it like this is a stepping stone. This is an additional tool. This one course is not going to completely alter your life forever. You know, this is something that you get to kind of add on and build on to this project that is you, that you're going to be continuing to build on for the rest of your life. So this one thing, while it may alter the direction somewhat, like in an airplane, when you alter the course a little, you maybe go a little, move it like this, but you end up way over here eventually, but you're not doing like a, you know, sharp turn right now. And I think just really being clear about that is like, as you're talking about, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like really helping me going, oh, I don't need to alter the course of someone's life completely, or else therefore I'm not qualified or a really great coach.
And you get stalled because you're like, how am I going to actually do that? Right. Taking on to, everybody's just biting off way more. And that's the effect of Neptune. And what's fascinating that you just made me realize too is like Neptune, as we said, rules spirituality. We're all spiritual entrepreneurs. So this is going to be a big part of our big blind spot that, you know, we're going to kind of have this tendency to it's one of our strengths, spirituality, right? And being like very in touch with like the unseen. But the shadow of that then is like, it's hard for us to just be real. And like, it's a little bit like, you know, so that's like my word for 2020 is get real. It really is. Like, and I'm just like, how can I be more like just realistic about this? Because like I saw that my tendency was to like, and it's not just in my business, just with everything. Like I'm just so like, and that's my gift on the one hand. It's what makes me very connected and able to do all these things or whatever. But at the same time, you know, like Amanda said, I get overwhelmed by it, and that creates like an issue in and of itself. But you know, bringing in some Saturn medicine here is a really good balancing mechanism, because Saturn is all about getting real, to doing things in bites that, in steps, and, saying, okay, here's this program, but what are the actual outcomes that I can realistically get behind? And then again, what are the requirements that I know? And I'll just like own that fully. And that's actually serving people more. Sure. You know what I mean? Like if we actually do those steps, people will get better results because they'll actually, we're setting them up for success. They're setting themselves up for success to go into a program with like proper expectations, and like something that's actually digestible and feasible to complete, right? So I just find that so interesting because, Gemini energy, it's like, it's such a blessing, right? To have new beginnings and to have this kind of almost like starry-eyed, just like butterfly, like flying through the, like free spirit, just like going from thing to thing. But, the shadow of that, and I know more than, that like very well because that's my sun. It's also my Chiron, right? And my Mars, but it's like the biggest lesson I've had to learn in my life is to watch my words, watch the vows that I make, watch the, how I get myself into things that I can't actually follow through on because I just think, oh, I can do anything, and that's what always would get me the most in trouble. Just, not being realistic about what I'm actually getting into. So, like I said, the full moon had that square from Neptune, right? I wouldn't have interpreted it that way if that wasn't happening, but it just felt so important to look at. And I'm excited for you guys to just think a little bit about that more going into 2020 from both ends, right? Like from the business owner end, the facilitator end, and then also the consumer end, because we're both always the student and the teacher, So anybody have anything else to add to that before I go on to the ritual that I had in mind for today? Okay, I just want to also share that something else that came through as important was the Gemini, being ruled by Mercury, along with Virgo, it rules the nervous system. So this was another important thing that came through for me to bring up, which was that, it's our responsibility to make sure that, we're taking care of our nervous system. And, our nervous system is like our one big communication system in our body, right? It's like all the messages and all that, and I just feel that a big thing going into 2020, because this is the final, I feel like it's like sending us off into 2020, kind of giving us the tools that we're going to need, like feed and nourish your nervous system. Don't over jam it with all this information, right? Like, let's make sure that it's ready to receive. How do we actually learn, right? When we are calm, when we have an environment within and without that's able to actually focus, right? It's like, I feel like sometimes we just don't want to look at that too. And we just kind of more coffee, more this, more that. And then our nervous system is so overwhelmed that we're not even retaining any of that information. So I felt like a big theme for this coming year for us is going to be like, just, first things first. Is my body good? Like, are my nerves satiated? And a beautiful herb to work with for that is oat straw. So if you're feeling called to nourishing your nervous system in a completely safe herb, there's no known counterindications that I'm aware of. I mean, double check, but there's a woman named Susan Weed, S-U-S-U-N, Susan Weed. She's a really interesting Aquarius, and I studied a little bit of herbs through her, not directly. She's kind of like what's that called? Like a contemporary of Rosemary Gladstar, who was my herbal teacher. Susan is like a super interesting character, but she came up with this concept of these nourishing herbal infusions where you take like a lot of herb dried and literally like an ounce of dried herb. You put it in a big mason jar, you fill it with boiling water, let it sit overnight, and it becomes this deep, deep infusion. The oat straw turns to like this golden color. Then you strain it and you drink that at like room temperature, and it's just extremely nutritive and restorative to the nervous system. So that's a great herb to work with. If you do feel like your nervous system needs a bit of a boost, and you're afraid, your nerves are afraid, you're overwhelmed, you don't sleep well, you kind of scattered, all that, it's very grounding. It's an herb of Venus. So you can definitely look her up on YouTube. I'll type her name. She's Wise Woman Herbs. Her thing is called, she's an author. So if you do make those, let me know, because I love doing them. And we could even do like a collective, like if you guys want to kind of do it together, we can like kind of keep each other posted on working with those infusions. I used to do it a lot more actively, and Matt was like really into them too. She has a couple different. It's actually very good for fertility as well. And I believe it's because it's so calming and nutritive to the whole system. So I once recommended it to a friend who was having trouble getting pregnant, and she actually got pregnant after working with it for like just a month. So it's a really powerful, beautiful herb. So Cassie said, I felt that today. My focus and energy was everywhere. I was forgetting everything. And I was like, what is up with me being all over the place? And it reminded me that I've been neglecting my daily meditation recently. My internal common focus has disappeared. Yep. It's totally, it's like, I feel that this time, like 2020, it's like going to be so important for us to take care of our first things first, like our body, like, and not just the body, but like the mental realm and like all those things, like before we can show up in our business fully from a place of true service, right? Like how could we do it really? How could we show up, in this not like fear, fight or flight way, right? Which is like what happens when, and then we start making crazy decisions in our business and we do these things that aren't really serving, right? Because we're not, it's adrenaline, it's like adrenal fatigue, all that kind of stuff. So important. And of course, meditation, that does have an effect on the physical body, for sure. Yeah. Yes, Amanda and Kimberly, this herb is grounding for sure. It is like I said, I believe it's definitely ruled by Venus, and I think it's the one, I think it's associated with Taurus, although I could be sure, wrong, it could be like more Libra, but it's definitely a Venus, which has that kind of embodying energy to it. So, and it tastes yummy too. So Libby said, I find I get foggy headed, like pregnancy brain around my moon time as well. Yep. Oh, that's interesting to note. Yeah. I'm just always, it's always like you guys know I'm Cancer rising. I'm ruled by the moon. Like that's my chart ruler. So I'm just like, I feel like it's just always like my moon time. I'm just kind of going. But it's so important for Geminis and anybody with strong air, anybody with these types of, even if like it's not in your chart, if it's just how you're actually feeling, grounding is so important. Okay, so I want to get into this ritual. If you do have a candle or something that you want, you don't have to. I'll do it kind of like for the group. But if you do want to grab anything, feel free. It's just going to be super simple. But what I had in mind was, since the full moon is really about amplifying and illuminating and kind of just, growing intention, right? I thought it would be cool for each of us to choose like one or maybe two or three power words that we're going to take with us into 2020. And I thought it would be cool, you don't have to do this part, but like kind of basing it off of where the Gemini full moon was. And if you want, I can share with you some ideas for like keywords or things. And then just write them down, and maybe you could write like a little affirmation, or it could just be the words themselves. And I'm going to light a candle, and And then each of us can just kind of repeat or, state our words into existence, because abracadabra, right? So it's like very intentional. What do you want to amplify in your life through these words? And then you can use them, you can kind of imprint on them, so that way that word then becomes an activator, because it's going to be encoded with this energy of this session right now and this time of this full moon energy. So that word can become kind of like an amulet. What's that called? There's like a name for it, but it's like, you encode it, and then anytime you say it, it activates this energy into being. So it's like you take it with you, like an amulet type of thing. So then, if you ever need at any time, you can just say the word and it will trigger, this powerful full moon energy for you. And whatever you're putting into it right now, whatever intention you put it in right now, and then it will just grow and grow like a seed. Okay, so I'm going to start giving some suggestions. Kimberly said Gemini 3rd house. So that's Gemini rules the 3rd house naturally. So that's a double. Let me just get out my list of words that I have. But some of the words associated there could be, it's funny because it's all about like thinking, speaking, learning, and reason. But beyond that, one of the virtues of Gemini is agility, play, communication, of course, but it has to be a word that really, and what's cool about this too, we can choose a word that maybe you want to renew its meaning for you and kind of upgrade, that word for yourself, right? Like these words are so powerful, but they become buzzwords and they become kind of overused, but I think there's a lot of power in reclaiming them for ourselves. So Gemini, also, like I said, agility, new, novelty, like beginnings, fresh start. I'm just going to give some, but just go with whatever intuitively comes. Knowledge, abracadabra is a good one too. And then also, if you want to choose like a more like medicine word, like a more balancing one, maybe you'd want to use something like getting real, you know what I mean? Like if you feel that energy is out of balance for you, then you can actually amplify something to balance it. So if you're feeling that maybe that's too much right now, right? Maybe you want to amplify a complementary energy, such as integrity is a good one. Let me get my list of words that I like to work with, but even structure, mastery, right? Like mastery, mystery would be more of a Gemini, because it's like, ooh, the mystery, the unknown, but maybe you want to call in more mastery at this point, so integrity, things like that. Okay, let me give some other ideas to people. If you do want some suggestions, just pop in the house number for me and I will give you some ideas. Also, you can definitely use that wheel of the virtues that I made. I did say play, because Gemini is like the eternal child. So play, wonder is a good one for Gemini too. Okay, so Cassie says 4th house. Okay, so for the 4th house, that energy is going to be about mystery. Yes, that is for sure. It has to do with like nurturing, comfort. Vigilance is a good one. Protection, sacred, like protecting what is sacred. It has to do with like the womb. It does have to do with the mother and the inner child as well. So I just want to give you ideas, but I want you to really listen into your own, it's intuition too. But I really want you to feel into whatever is for you at this point. What do you want to amplify? Amanda says 11th house. So the 11th house we know is very, it's Aquarius, so it's associated with progress and freedom and social settings, dreams. It has to do with our dreams. I like the word, I like transcendence for both 11th and 12th house in different ways. I think that 11th house also has to do with, trying to think of a good, it's like, I'm so picky about my words. So I'm looking at my list and I'm like, progress, evolution, change. I think there's a quality of, there's like an acceptance and an equality as well, where it's like embracing all of life's many colors, you know? It's like very, it's radical. There's a radical essence to it as well. But just feeling into more of like the Aquarian, there's an idealism as well, like really, really following and trusting your ideals, and visionary as well, vision, and futuristic too. And by the way, being that the 11th house ruled by Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, there is a Saturnian essence to it as well that you could totally tap into, which is like more structured and more hardcore. It's a very hardcore sign. So, you know, just sticking to your, like staying true to yourself is a big part of it. Truth is a big part of it. Okay. So whatever comes through for you. Libby's doing abracadabra. Oh, I love that pyramid of light vision. Beautiful. Okay. And Amanda, your Saturn is in, oh, okay. So that's a power placement because it's aligned there. Okay. So does everybody feel that they have their words, or you need another minute or so to choose something? And it could be a phrase, whatever. It's your thing. So, you know. By the way, you know, you can also work with like animal images and colors for something like this, you know. If it's like beyond words, that's totally fine. You know, it could be just like some kind of vision or symbol, like there's no right or wrong. But Gemini rules words, but it, and you know, if you find a word that you really do resonate with, what I find to be the most interesting thing about astrology is that it is, as I say all the time, it's a language of energy. And words and language are a frequency, right? So when we plug into a certain frequency and we begin thinking that way and speaking that way, right? That's how we can actually create our world and create our life accordingly, because words cast spells and words actually create the reality of things. So pretty cool. I have this whole list of words that I keep hanging above my desk. I'll show you guys. And I wrote, it's called vibrations, I called it. So these are the vibrations I choose to plug into every day. Joy, clarity, confidence, power, certainty, faith, love, trust. And there's like a lot of them, but it's like whenever I just need to replug and remember what I'm like, what do I want to experience in my life, I look at those power words. And maybe sometimes I'll like choose one to kind of sit with and really think about and ask myself if I'm really, you know, like attuning to that essence. There's so much to say about that. But so, okay, I'm going to light the candles. I did 2 candles. Gemini is like duality. One black and one white. And then, you know, you just take a minute. Maybe you want to close your eyes and just think about, you know, the fact that this is the last moon of our decade, even though I believe time is completely arbitrary. Actually believe in any of that, but whatever, it's still meaningful to us because we go by it, so that's why it's meaningful. But like there's something there, so you know, maybe you want to give a little farewell wish or whatever, and maybe just tune in to where you're at and where you want to see yourself next year at this time. And we'll just all kind of close our eyes. And then as you feel ready, just unmute yourself and say your power words. And it doesn't matter if you say it all at the same time. Actually, let's all unmute ourselves. And then we're just going to say them. And we're just going to not care. And as you feel ready to, just say your power words or your mantra or your affirmation. And actually, I just need to create mine. So give me a minute here as I do that. I really want to tune in. I want to think about what I want mine to be. Oh my God. Okay. Because the moon was at my Mars exactly. Like 19. So yeah, I know what mine is. Okay, I'm gonna light these babies, and then as you feel ready to, feel free to just speak it into being.
Abracadabra.
I trust my own inner knowledge to guide me.
Abracadabra, always in integrity.
Clear
Sacred
vision,
mastery.
Love it back to me.
steady progress.
Radical responsibility.
Surrender to God.
Grounded in my truth.
Slowing down. I am truth. You can just kind of open your hands like a vessel, since we are who we just was, to receive this activation, this upgrade, this gift, which we can really choose to tap into at any time now with these power words. We're going to take them with us, and we're just going to put them in our pocket, a little backpack, and we're going to call upon their gifts and their strength. And receive from them ongoing, right? What we need from inside of ourselves. Remembering that we are eternal students and eternal teachers. And trusting ourselves to be both of those things at the same time. Trusting that we don't have to ever force anything. We're really just butterflies. Like we're kind of like little butterflies, kind of just, we're visiting. And there's a greater cycle at play that we're part of. If you want, if you feel called to, you can kind of just take, you can imagine your inner butterfly totem, maybe what it looks like. That little wandering, free essence that's always open to explore, but is yet very fragile. And just put it into your heart chakra center and give it some love and protect it while still giving it its freedom. Remembering to always breathe. And whenever you feel ready, you can just open your eyes, little butterfly flutters, whenever you're ready. And we can just come back and thank you, ladies, for being here. And you know, if you do get the oat straw, please let me know. So maybe I'll get it. Like, I think it'd be so fun to do kind of like a group journey with that planned. If you need a good source for it, I love Mountain Rose Herbs, which is a really good company. They have great quality. And you'd want to order like a bunch of it if you're going to be doing those infusions, like maybe a pound. But if you have any follow-up thoughts about today or whatever, you know, please share them in the group, Exalt Entrepreneurs, or with me, whatever. But I really just want to thank you guys for being here. I'll just share that. Okay, so I will post this replay up in the plugged in members virtual place. And thank you guys. I love you so much. I think it's a good time to end. It's 1:11. So I'll see you guys around.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.